What is going on, guys? It is Daniel Wright, and you are here listening to another episode of Paving the Way. As always, guys, I'm happy to have you here. Happy Wednesday to you, or whatever day it is that you're listening to this. Nonetheless, I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate you supporting the show, and I appreciate you taking what I talk about here and putting it into practice day in and day out. Guys, I hope your week is off to a fantastic start. I hope you've got a lot lined up for the remainder of this week, and I hope your year is going very, very well. It's wild to think that we only have about, 20 weeks until Christmas, or about 22 weeks left in the year as a whole. I don't even know off the top of my head, but it's not very many. So the year is flying by. A lot of folks are kind of winding down some summertime vacations and trips, and gearing up for school season to start for their kids, or the fall to be coming around the corner. Or in our world, we're gearing up for the end of year rush. Yes, I'm talking about the end of the year, and it's August. But nonetheless, guys, we have to make sure that we are prioritizing things properly in our lives day in and day out to make sure that when the opportunities come, we are prepared accordingly. So I want to talk a little bit about today about why work-life balance may actually be killing your business. I think today it's definitely a hot topic to talk about work-life balance. Make sure you have time for self-care and self-this and self. But nonetheless, there's a few points that I want to kind of cover today on, the myth of the perfect balance, how having seasons of imbalance is okay, and setting boundaries so that way you can actually enjoy the life you're trying to build. So with that being said, let's get started. All right, guys, welcome back. Like I said, we're going to be talking a little bit today about this big old myth of the work-life balance that we hear all about, right? And I just want to preface this, guys. I'm not a believer that says that you have to be a slave to your work or your business, or that you got to be working 80 hours a week, or you got to only work 4 hours a week and do whatever you want the rest of it. There is no extreme side of it. But the work-life balance side of it is a very difficult one for me to define. And the reason why I consider it, and I believe that it's a myth, is because it's also something that doesn't have to be true. So I heard one time that said the greatest people in the world at what they do don't have balance in their life. They know how to prioritize things in their life. And so when you're talking about the work-life balance that we hear day in, day out on social media or just in society as a whole, and everybody says, well, you got to have the balance. You got to have time for your work, and you got to have time for your personal life and your family. You got to have time for yourself. You got to have time for your friends. You got to have time for your hobbies, your church, or whatever it is that you're involved in, right? But what happens if you make sure that you build a schedule that works for you, for your family, for your life, and you prioritize those things? And when you're in the midst of them, when you're present there, you are fully present. I heard Ed Milet say at one time, talking about the fact that work-life balance doesn't exist. You have to be able to prioritize and execute on those priorities when you're committing to them. And so for folks that are parents, it's when you're prioritizing being a parent, you're the best parent you can possibly be. When you're prioritizing being a leader or a boss at work, you're prioritizing being the best leader that you can be. It doesn't mean that the other things that you have going in your life don't matter. It means that they're not currently the priority. And so I think that too many people get caught up in this whole thing of this work-life balance myth that they have to abide by, that they can't work too many hours, that they can't work on the Saturdays, they can't do this, they can't do that because it's not balanced. But if you're constantly chasing balance, you'll never find it, and you'll continue to be in unbalance, right? And so when you're talking about that, is you're going to have seasons of imbalance. You're going to have seasons of your life where you're putting a lot of focus, a lot of energy, and a lot of effort into one major particular area. Sometimes that can be a personal area where you got to put a lot of time and effort for a season into that, whether it's a health related thing, a life event, a work event, whatever it may be. It's a personal thing that you've got to put in a lot of time and effort into. Other times at work, it may be a professional imbalance. You may be trying to come up against deadlines. You may be trying to hit quotas. You may be trying to make sure that your business survives the next quarter and doesn't find itself going bankrupt. And so therefore, you're going to have a massive imbalance trying to save your business. And so other things may have to sacrifice. And so there is no room for perfect balance at all times. And we have to make sure that we understand that imbalance in seasons can be okay. For example, for us, we tend to get in sales and estimating, okay, we tend to get very, very busy in quarter one. We come out of the holidays after about halfway through January or so, we are slammed with requests for doing site assessments, scope assessments, putting proposals together, budgets for the year, getting things updated from the previous year, whatever it may be, issues one thing after another after another. On top of that, that time of year is also our industry trade shows and industry events that we tend to travel to. Okay, so for quarter one, we have a very heavy work imbalance. We do a lot of traveling for work. We do a lot of meetings for work. We're constantly behind the computer and the keyboards into the evenings, getting things done and getting things out to clients so that way we can set up the year for success. Okay. Quarter two, our operations team has a major life imbalance because quarter two is when we start kicking. The operations team is running 100 miles an hour in 100 different directions because the weather's breaking. We can start putting down material in parking lots, and we've got to get things done because the first sunny and 65 day you have of the year, everybody thinks their parking lot should be done that day. So there's a massive imbalance in that season of life. But the season before for operations, right, the quarter before that, they got to have some easier days, easier weeks, get caught up on maintenance, spend some time with their families, get home at a decent time for dinner every night, making sure that they're prioritizing their life, their home life in that time. Okay, so those are just some examples for our business and in our industry that we have to recognize and understand that seasonal imbalance is okay. And we have to know that going into it so that way growing strategically can take place and we know what to expect. Right? That doesn't mean that things don't change. It doesn't mean that things don't come up and get varied in whatever way it may be, but nonetheless, we at least have an overarching strategy that we understand the seasons of imbalance that we're going to be facing in this organization. Now, with the seasons of imbalance, you still have to have boundaries, right? If you would talk to our crew who was here a couple of years ago, or some of them are still here, but if you would talk to the group as a whole, they would tell you that Daniel had no idea what the word boundaries even meant when it comes to scheduling work. Because when Daniel, myself, did the schedule for our operations team, our guys were working an average of about 60 to 70 hours per week. Mind you, that's an average. So there were several that were 70, 80, 90-hour weeks, and we had maybe a few that trickled in around the 40 to 50-hour weeks. And so I had no idea how to actually have boundaries when it came to making sure that our team, our crew, was not being overworked to the point of exhaustion and creating cultural and morale problems, right? And so you have to make sure that when you're going through these phases and you're setting the priorities, that you also have boundaries that you hit. I can tell you one, for one example, my wife and I, we've really in the last year or so had to learn how to set some boundaries between business life and our marriage and our personal life. So last year, as you all know, who followed along in this journey for a while, 2024 was a very tough year for myself personally in business from just an overall, mental, emotional, financial, whatever it may be. It was just a tough year. It was one of those years that you always hear about that like you either make it or break it. And obviously we made it. We're still here. We're kicking. We're grinding. We're making things happen. But nonetheless, we had to learn to set boundaries last year because I was constantly taking the stress and worries of the business home with me. And so therefore, when I was at home trying to be a husband, even though Kelsey and I were married and we owned the business and we worked together, even though when I'm trying to be a husband, I couldn't be a fully present husband because I didn't have boundaries to turn off the business thoughts and be a present husband. And so last year, one of the boundaries that we took up, or we kind of created, was we started golfing together as a couple. She took up golf, got interested in it, enjoyed it as something we could do together. And I'd say that 98% of the time that we're out on the golf course, we don't talk a whole lot about work. It's just husbands and wife hanging out. And we get to be together. We do it with friends. We have dinner afterwards, have a cocktail, whatever it is. And we have created those boundaries that when we're doing certain things, we have the boundary that says, no, this isn't work time. This is husband and wife time. But then when we're in the office, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, talking about work things wherever we may be, if it's an evening meeting, a weekend thing, whatever it might be, hey, this is business. Right now, we are talking business, and we've got things to handle. So if we have any personal things going on, we set the boundaries that says the personal things stay over here, the business stuff is getting handled right here. And that's what we carry on to do. And so, guys, you have to make sure that for yourself, I know I gave a handful of different examples that you might be able to relate to, or you might not, but you have to look at where you have to maybe set some boundaries in your life. Because I know some of the most willing and driven individuals that will do whatever it takes to make their businesses run, but they put the relationships on the back burner. And then I also know people who put a massive amount of emphasis on their personal time, their self-care routines, their this or that, and then they get to work whenever it's convenient for them. And so that's my point in saying that it's not about finding the balance. It's about knowing how you need to prioritize the things, when you need to prioritize them, and setting the boundaries around those times so that way you can be fully present and be the best version of you in that moment that you need to be. And so my encouragement to you is to think about that. Spend some time thinking about, what does your time allotment look like? Where do your energy and efforts go to on a regular basis? And what are the results that you're getting from that? If you tuned in last week, I talked about building a business that doesn't rely on you as the leader to operate. Talk about building a machine, building a vehicle that can run and operate, and you make sure it stays finely tuned and it's on course in the direction it needs to go. Well, I can tell you one thing that I've learned is that as the leader and the visionary for the business, if I don't set these boundaries that I'm talking about, if I don't go through the seasons of imbalance and be okay with it and understand that it's part of the life that I'm trying to build, and if I don't get rid of the myth that I need to have this magical work-life balance, then I'm not best equipped to set the vision and to guide this business down the best possible path. Because I have to make sure that I'm spending time learning and understanding what this team needs. What does the company need? What do the clients need? What do our vendors need? What do our outside resources need? What do you need as the listeners of this podcast? If I don't spend time trying to figure these things out and setting these boundaries in my life and making sure that I'm being present where I'm at, then I'm not delivering to my highest potential. Somebody's going to get shorted. And so, yes, there's going to be times where your time is shorting certain areas, but your quality and your presence doesn't have to. It's the old adage, right? Quality over quantity. So you may only get to see your family for a couple hours a day. You may only get to see your coworker or your newest team member that you're trying to mentor and teach for a little bit of time. You may only get to spend time with the client, the contractor, the vendor, whatever it may be, for a certain amount of time. But if you don't learn to set the boundaries and be fully present when you're prioritizing those things, then you're shorting them completely. So, like I've said, the myth of a perfect work-life balance needs to go out the window. You have to know and understand that there's going to be seasons of imbalance. And that's what's going to allow you to grow strategically without getting into the burnout, without letting anyone down, without selling yourself short, but not trying to, kill yourself trying to get to unreasonable expectations. Seasonal imbalance should be acceptable. Okay. And then setting those boundaries. So when you're prioritizing where you're putting your efforts at a certain given time, you're fully present and giving the best you possibly can to that. Guys, I can tell you firsthand, I've tried to be the type who's always working, and then randomly sprinkle in my personal time, my time with family, my time with friends. And that leads down to really an unfulfilling, overworked, and rather exhausted life that sounds cool to tell people about, but doesn't actually give you anything to show for it. And then when I switched how I prioritize my time, when I set boundaries on making sure that I hold to my commitments, and when I got over this myth of thinking that I had to have everything perfectly balanced and make sure that I was here for this and there for that and gave all the attention over here, when I finally started figuring out how to mesh this all out in the last year and a half or so, my life, and I believe everyone around me, has gotten much better. And it's because I'm able to give myself fully to where I'm at that time. That's what it comes down to. Be fully present, be where your feet are, and make sure that you're giving the best version of yourself to all those that count on it. So I challenge you this week to take a little bit of audit of your time. Where are you spending it? Are you striving for this mythical work-life balance? Are you weighted way too heavy consistently in one area? Or are you doing it in seasons, in segments, to where you can put all your energy here and then go to the next one? And then making sure that you have boundaries set in place so that way you can be showing up the best version of yourself to all those that count on you day in and day out. So guys, as always, I encourage you to check out our social media channels, check out our company's pages, our YouTube channel, to see our stuff in action real time. I always want to make sure that you guys know that I'm not just sitting behind the camera, sitting behind a microphone, just blowing smoke to try and make us sound good or look good or make it sound like I've got it all figured out. I like to show you guys that we live real lives. We run real businesses. We have real people, and we are learning day in and day out. And I'm wanting to make sure that I continue to prioritize, to set boundaries, and to hold to the commitments to providing you guys the value as often as I possibly can. So that way, hopefully, I'm paving a better way for you to build your business, your team, and your life. So as always, guys, share this with somebody who you think might benefit from it. Drop a comment, drop a like, a share, all that fun stuff to help the algorithm out and get this out to more people. So that way we can help them also. So guys, have a fantastic rest of your week. I'm always here for you. If you need anything, feel free to reach out. I look forward